Hello, HexFest.
Hey, how's it going?
My first time here. I'm Uncle Birch, also Michael Correll. Most people know me as Uncle Birch. I'm probably the only Birch you'll ever hear in witchcraft. It's one of the only craft names not taken. And for the past decade or two, the gods decided that it's my job to teach witches full time. Doing pretty good at it. So I ended up here at HexFest. Now, magical warfare. I love that so many people showed up because I grew up through Wicca, and Wicca was the dominant force for most of my life, and I never really agreed with it because there was a time in my life I was a cop for 3 years, and there were some bad people out there, dirtbags we used to call them, bad guys, bad hombres, that kind of thing. And if you don't think that we have those as witches, well, you ain't paying attention. If you don't think that Wiccans will do the same kind of stuff, well, you haven't been around long enough. What I gotta tell you is...
Nothing so vicious as a fluffy bunny you've offended.
Exactly. I've been at this for probably, I've been teaching for 45 years, so I actually started teaching about 2 weeks into my Wicca 101 class, so about 45 years, and I gotta tell you, witches can't be trusted. And all the way back, even when I was a kid, if you invite me over for dinner, probably the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the bathroom. And I'm going to look for some personal concerns. Or we used to call them links, personal links, relics, that kind of thing, hair, pubic hair, the little blood things if you cut yourself shaving. There's plenty of things you can find in a person's bathroom. I had a filing cabinet. I would just file that stuff away because I know, you may be my friend today, but as soon as shit turns the other way, you're going to turn to magic. That's what witches do. Witches are manipulative people. And if you ever find yourself making another witch feel powerless, they're going to come at you. They're going to come at you. It's been my experience. Professionally, I probably do more curse reversals than any other work. People call me up for love work, court work, all kinds of things. But getting rid of curses comes up all the time. And especially back when I had my brick and mortar shop, people walk in all the time with that kind of stuff. Now sometimes, people might not be under a curse. That's quite often the case, but thinking you're under a curse will do the same damage to you as a curse. So the cure is the same, even if it's a psychological curse. You're gonna start making the mistakes that fuck up your life. So witches will throw on you. And then now, it's like, Wicca's not the dominant force anymore. I hope everybody understands that. There's plenty of people at the party, now hoodoo and conjure, that's all big. They don't have any rules. They have ethics, but they don't have any rules against throwing on you. I'm a Polero. They throw on each other more than most other things. They're always, houses are always at war with each other. That's one of the worst things about that tradition and why I don't hang out with Poleros very often. So I did a whole thing with like who, what, why, where, when, and how. I was like, why? First was the things like, why would you want to engage in magical warfare? Well, I'm a father, and right there, that became the first thing. I tended to be a non-violent person my whole life. Even that brief period I told you about being a cop, I managed to do that rather non-violently. I'd wrestle people into handcuffs all day, every day. Never hit anybody. Shot at a couple people. Never hit anybody. I had to have it. My gun was out a lot. But I managed to, do that without, brawling in the street, that kind of thing. I was a non-violent person most of my life. And then I had a daughter. She's about going to be 23 soon.
That'll change you.
Exactly. I was pushing the stroller across the street one day, just minding my own business, and this woman didn't stop her car fast enough. Her tires kind of screeched, and part of myself had leapt through her window, reached down her Gulliver, pulled out her entrails, set them on fire, and I was dancing upon them in the street. Just happened in a flash, and I said, whoa, where the hell did that come from? And I realized, well, as a pagan, that's the most natural thing in the world, protecting the young. Nothing more vicious than an animal protecting the young. And humans, absolutely, I will fuck you up. Now, if somebody's going to throw on you, that's like, Mom always said, and she totally taught me how to curse early on. My witch mother, not my actual mother, but the woman that raised me in witchcraft, Judith Dufresne, she taught cursing right away. And she said right away, it's like, you never want to throw a curse on somebody unless you would do a drive-by at their house. So she would, just shoot up their whole house because anybody in there is going to get hit. And that's what I think is, if somebody's going to throw at me, my wife could get hit, my kid could get hit, dogs, cats, I ought to protect the family. That's a why right there. You gotta protect yourself. And there's this other thing, a story that my wife told me, and I use it all the time, and I'll probably open up each of my workshops with this story. It's an old Bedouin tale. This old man, he bought a turkey. He heard that eating turkey, fresh turkey, is good for your longevity and give you a long-lasting life. So he bought this turkey, he's feeding it, fattening the turkey up. And one day somebody steals his turkey. So he goes to his sons and he says, somebody stole my turkey, you need to get my turkey back. And they laugh at him. They go, Dad, what do you need a turkey for? It wasn't, a favorite food of theirs or something like that. What do you need a turkey for? He says, just get back my turkey. A couple days later, somebody stole his camel. He goes to the boys, he says, get back my turkey. A little bit later, his daughter gets raped. The boys say, what are we going to do now? He says, well, you should have got back my turkey. The moment that they knew that they could take our turkey, we lost everything. It's like Bedouin law. When a person gets away with fucking with you, throwing at you, they'll do it again. They'll do it again, they'll do it again, they'll do it again. And they'll keep coming. And sometimes you gotta, magically bloody somebody's nose to keep them from throwing on you. You've gotta, if you take it, there's gonna be more of it. Don't go quietly into that good night, witches. So that's pretty much my why. Then, so we got why, who, what, where, when, and how. So in magical warfare, the first, laying plans we're doing today, first thing I need to know is who. Who, and if you don't know who, people have, you put it on a petition, unknown attacker. There's plenty of ways to do that, but I'm going to engage in a protracted war with another witch out there. I want to know who they are. And then when I want to know who they are, I'm going to go to their Facebook account, or their Instagram, or their Twitter. They're going to have a picture.
People put too much information out
I'm
there.
going to have a picture. That picture is printable. I can write on that picture. I can set that picture on fire. I can get more pictures. I can stick needles through that picture. I can do a whole lot of things. Sigil on their face with that picture. Probably, people got egos. They're going to be on Facebook. They'll be talking about their life. I'm going to find out, who their kids are, who their family is. Probably can find out where they live. And if they use their legal name, I can Google their legal name and probably find out their address. Most people's address is pretty easy to find. Now, if I have their address, well, then I can go to Google Maps and get a satellite picture of their house, or maybe I can go Street View. All those really handy for magical links on your target. I want to know everything that I can about my enemy. Some of the titles for this course are culled directly from the Art of War. Laying plans is one of the chapters of the Art of War, and these are some of the things that I study in addition to witchcraft. But I've got this weird way where everything I see, I think about witchcraft. It's like when I study the Art of War, I think, how can I use that in witchcraft? My wife went to Chinese medicine school, and I'm going, that is witchcraft. She's doing, that's all witchcraft. Like, now how can I use that same thing on like a voodoo doll or something? Move the chi around backwards and screw them up or something like that. I never really figured out how to do acupuncture on a doll. I just always think of how can I apply that thing to witchcraft, or how does this apply to witchcraft? I'm fairly obsessed, and it's not going away. The Art of War, one of the things Sun Tzu says right away is like, know your enemy as you know yourself, and you will win every battle. So I need to know myself too, but I need to know everything I can about that person. If I can get their legal name, I'm going to find out about it. People on the internet these days, I'm always arguing with new witches. I'm on a lot of these new witch Facebook pages because I bitched so much about the stuff I was seeing out there, just some of the bullshit the kids are being taught out there in the new witch world. And my anarchist self said, well, all right, you see the problem, now it's your job to solve the problem. Jump in there and say things to these kids. And what I see out there, I see here's my athame I just got. Isn't it cool? Hey, here's my wand. Oh, here, let me open up my book of shadows and show you this cool little artwork here. Those are great personal links, and guess what? They're inside the circle. They're in the shields. I have just bypassed all of your shields and gone right into your temple because you wanted to post your most precious pieces of craft and, to the world. And again, then I could print those up, I could write on them, I could put sizzles on them, I could do all these things. People post too much stuff, and their altars. A lot of kids are like, show me your altars. Like, no, I'm not going to show you my altar, you dumbass. And likewise, spell work. A lot of people post their spell work out here. And I know it's really popular for like professional conjure workers to send a picture if they're working to the client. And to the extent where people ask me to do that, I say, no, I'm not going to do that. That's stupid. Well, everybody does that. I said, well, you came to me. Everybody does that.
At the
but
very
you
least,
came to me.
don't post it until after it's done and gone and manifested.
Exactly. The 3 keys of magic: relaxation, concentration, and projection. Projection is letting go. Ultimately, I want to throw and forget that I threw it. I want to let it totally go. I live in California, and even before it was legal, I always recommended a post-ritual bong hit for these kind of things. That short-term memory that happens, or the short-term memory loss, exactly what I want after a spell. I'm gonna go do me a bong hit, watch something stupid on TV that has nothing to do with magic, and just let that shit go. But it's never gone if you post it on the internet. And if you've sent it to a client, well, it's digitally out there. They have a copy of it now. You've got a copy of it on your phone. Not only could somebody, use that against you and thwart your spell, but having that physical component exist thwarts your spell. Mom always taught me everything that can be burned after a spell should be burned. Nothing should remain. Everything else should be buried. Nothing, candle drippings, none of that shit. People do that too. They do a spell and then they post, here's my cool candle dripping that came out. What do y'all think that means? Well, what I think it means is that all the troll witches out there on Facebook are gonna throw on you. There are people out there that will hex you just to see if they can, or just to get an ego boost. And when they do it, they're gonna be thinking like Uncle Birch, the Who, they're gonna watch you. Like, if you're on my Facebook, I'm having a bad day, you're not going to hear about it. I'm going to tell you everything great going on in my life. I'm going to go on and on and on about how much money I'm making, what a good life I'm having, but I'm not going to talk about sorrow and misery. I'm sure that happens to me sometimes too, but I know my enemies are out there watching, and I know I have plenty of them on my Facebook, and I keep them around to deliver disinformation to my other enemies. Right? It's like reverse spies. That's in the art of war too. It's just like converted spies. You send them back, tell them something that you want the other enemy to hear, and sure enough, I've got a couple specific examples. That enemy always pops up when I post it here, because that person, and that person are going to go tell them. And so, I use that kind of stuff in my magical warfare too. So where did I get to? I got the why and the who. The what. What magic do they practice? I bet I can find that out on their Facebook page too. And they probably, like these kids, they're posting pictures of their work and that kind of stuff. Certain types of magic have certain types of magic that are good to thwart them. There are several traditions out there that they won't have salt on their altar, or they won't use salt because salt offends their spirits. There's your first weapon for that person, salt. Use salt for everything on that person. Those people that have to have dirt on their altar for earth instead of salt. It's like their spirits are easily thwarted by salt. Just a little thing, and salt's a very powerful thing anyways. But there are many types of magic out there, and you figure out the different types of magic that thwart different types of magic. Like, some low witchcraft, I'm probably going to break out some ceremonial magic. Or some Wiccans magic. Maybe I'm going to go Strega. They don't have, the Strega just have, what's their rule? Never harm the innocent. I can live with that. I live with that. The harm done? No. And then since I went there, I've always thought that that whole thing with Wiccans, we're pagan, we're worshiping the earth, bugs are equal to us, microbes are equal, everybody's equal, everything's all the big cycle of life. We harm microbes and small organisms. Every time we start the car, I just smoked a cigarette, I harmed myself. I harmed the environment. I harmed people with my secondhand smoke. We humans can't be harmless. We
If you
can't do
breathe,
it.
you're harming
It's
something.
exactly.
In the air.
We damage everything. But when I was, my first studies were Wicca, there was an oath, don't cause harm. But then they went one more. Don't allow harm to be caused if within your power to stop it. And when you're a witch, what is that? What's not in my power to stop it? I don't, yes, I can't fly yet, but it's still possible. I'm gonna figure out the formula, get that broom to work. It's still possible. I never tell myself anything's impossible when we're talking about magic. So what do they practice is going to be really important. There's going to be a magic that I'm going to use to thwart them. When is important. If I can find out where they live, there's a time zone involved. And most people know, Mom taught me way back in the day, she taught protection magic by teaching how people hex. And she talked about these dark people out there skulking around 3 in the morning throwing on you. Because 3 in the morning is when you're most susceptible to these kind of things. Now, I need to know when it's 3 in the morning in their world. I might be able to do that at midnight if they're on the East Coast and I don't have to stay up till 3 in the morning. If we're in the same time zone, I'm going to want to go at 3 in the morning, 3, 4 in the morning. And that's when you want to be protected. That's when, that's when I always tell people, it's like, when they come to me for these kind of things, my first question is, okay, how are you sleeping? And what I'm going to look for there is, are you waking up around 3 in the morning for no apparent reason? And I'll go, yeah, now that you mentioned it, I'm waking up at 3 in the morning for, longest time. And I'll say, okay, what's your impulse upon waking? And they always go, what do you mean? I said, well, do you want to fight or do you want to flight? Do you have any of those responses? And then if I get one of those, well, we're going to go further. I said, okay, you feel like you got to run over and turn on the light? That's always a big one. I learned that back when I was a kid, that turning on the light in the night, it disrupts everything. That electronic burst of photons in the room, it fucks everything up. That's why we don't turn on the lights when we're doing a ritual. When we got the candles going in the altar and all that stuff, you don't want to turn on the light, it's going to fuck everything up. It'll come back, it'll get back together, so I always teach, it's like, okay, turn on the light, and then start burning stuff and waving your arms around. Chanting in Greek, it's not time to go to bed now. You need to stay up for an hour at least and just work that situation, get your shields up. If you had your shields up, apparently they weren't working very well. Rework your protections, rework your wards before going to sleep. I heard, I think it's in Hoodoo, they had a thing where you don't go back to sleep in the same position. Change the position you were sleeping in. I don't know really how that tricks the spell or tricks the spirits, but it is a tradition out there that people believe in. So let's see, so I got the why, who, what, and the where, the when, then the how. It's like, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna box them? Might want to box them. I don't want to get to the crush the enemy part, because that's my, I have 3 workshops. They all stand alone on themselves, but I don't want to get to too much of that. But whoever this person is, I've got to take care of them so they don't come back. And a mirror box is always one of my favorite go-tos. I'm usually probably going to want to bury that. Maybe I'm going to bury that in a graveyard. I used to have, back when we were in Santa Cruz, there was a vacation home next to ours, and I had a whole graveyard in their front lawn. It's like, nobody ever did anything with the plants, so nobody ever did any landscaping or anything. I had about 15 people buried in their front yard, so hopefully they never tear that house down. And then, so those ones, that one's pretty common. The box, anybody ever done the freezer spell?
Yeah.
That one's a classic. That one's, it really works.
It
really
always
works
works.
well. It almost seems like tradition that you need some frozen chicken in the back of your freezer for that one, because all the spells say you have to stick it in the back of the frozen chicken or something like that. I don't know if that's really a requirement or if that just shows his way back in the freezer. But the trick is that is if you ever move, you ever have a power outage, you can't let that stuff thaw. Got to run out, get some ice, get some dry ice, something, get a battery operated cooler or something like that. And I've literally had a cooler for people from the freezer in like a little igloo. Take it to the next house. Just the first thing I do, go right to that house, put it in the freezer, because if I had to freeze you, I can't think of a reason I'd ever want you unfrozen. Maybe if we made peace, but I don't know. People make peace all the time. People apologize for things all the time. Unless I have actions that go along with that, I'm not a forgiving man.
Words are in.
Yeah, and it's all about the kids. They used to talk about this thing called the splash effect. Like you picture yourself with a little shell around you, and that was really, I think it was psychic self-defense and well-being. God, I forget the author now, but it's one of the oldest psychic self-defense books we had.
The Unfortunate.
Thank you. Hers was you charged your aura with this purple shell, and then you filled it with flecks of gold, I believe it was. It was a really, really good one, but it's a personal shield spell. So, picture yourself, you got the personal shield spell. I got my ball of energy, I throw it at you. What's gonna happen? Splash, the splash effect. Now it's all over your house, all over your kids, all over everything. So it's like, protect the self, protect the house, protect everything, but especially the kids. Kids are vulnerable to that kind of stuff, and that's way back to the why we do this kind of stuff. Defending the family, defending yourself. So let's see. So we got the who, where, why, when, and how, and then techniques. Any kind of object associated with the target can be used to do magic on. I think I talked about personal links, personal concerns. I like to combine them. I don't do voodoo, but I do dolls. I do poppets. I want to make a poppet out of this person. If I have their personal concerns in a poppet, then it gives me a lot more leeway. I can bind it. Bind your arms behind your back, I can bind your feet, I can stick pins in you, I can bury you under noxious stuff like, maybe a box with graveyard dirt and sulfur and some peppers. Was there a hand up?
Nice parking lot. Construction sites, parking lots. Nothing like having 17 stories on top of your enemy.
Ah, that's a good one.
Yes.
That's a good one. What's the mobster that's buried under Yankee Stadium? Yeah, that worked pretty well for that. Parking lots. What was that? What you do? I don't see them these days. I do wax poppets. I make candles. Part of some of the stuff I manufacture. I learned how to take the molds and just swish the wax around to have a little shell. And I got it big enough to where it wouldn't break. Wax poppet, it's gonna, I can burn it. After I've stuffed it with things, after I've done all the things I'm gonna do to it, something about seeing my enemy melt is just, it's so powerful. Really does it for me. I saw a cat box. Bury him in a cat box. That was a pretty nasty one. There's a guy. I remember a guy. I think he was a root doctor, and he was working for a client, and he got the poppet, and he rigged a piece of coat hanger around the poppet's neck, and hung it on the toilet bowl, right where so he could piss on it. Every day. I was like, wow, your client's getting some extra work right there. Let's see. lent something to the party, so it reminded me that I was gonna do like a Q&A thing, but I wanna see where we are with time. Let's see, we tell me what time it is?
It's 11:09.
11:09, all right, well, I don't need to do the Q&A yet. So, let's see where I was gonna go. So who, what, why, where, when, and how. And then what tools am I gonna use? You made it. With Wicca, we kind of lost touch with some of the really important tools. The athame, or the ritual blade, whatever you're going to call it, but the athame was a spiritual weapon before it was a pointer. You know, we tend to point it, cast circles around, and people don't want to use it for its original purpose. Now, we don't want to cut anything physical with it, of course. That kind of taints it, but as a spiritual weapon, we've got to recognize that all that stuff came from Solomon. All the tools, the wand, the configuration of our wand, the configuration of our blades, and if we go look at Solomon, his entire altar is covered in weapons. Most of it was weapons. He had the athame, he had a sword, he had a blasting rod, he had several types of wands. The boline comes from Solomon as well. All of this stuff is much older than witchcraft, and witches borrow stuff. Fill our little bag of tricks
Works,
with it.
use it.
Exactly, whatever works. But let me do a Q&A thing. You got any questions? I forgot your name. Say it
Tony.
again. What?
Tony,
Tony. I'll remember it once I said it.
so, kind of wondering what your thoughts are, because there's not a right or wrong way to look at this, I don't think, but with witchcraft becoming this kind of a mainstream thing, you have a lot of young people that are like, yeah, sure, I'll try that, but you also have a lot of people that are on the fringes that intend to do you harm. So they'll hire some young witch to do it. Do you punish the witch?
Well, that's hatching an evil conspiracy. All the conspirators must be hung.
I agree. Obliterate all opposition.
Yes. And what it brings me to that's an excellent example. Pretty public knowledge, whenever Christian Day gets in a witch war. And there was one that happened recently in the last couple of years. It was a pretty prominent person on the other end. I won't go there and mention the names of the dead. But these people hatched a conspiracy against Christian, Brian,
Sandra.
not Lori, yeah,
Sandra.
Sandra. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about
Yeah.
already.
And Sandra, if I remember right, wasn't that actually a mistake? That was a different person they were gonna aim for? And
I
for some
think
reason,
so.
Her name got tossed in?
I think so. But they did this. Well, first of all, they enlisted their students in their war, and that's weak. I can't believe I lost a lot of respect when I heard that one. And the way we heard that one is because that student, when they had a falling out with them, leaked the email. Never hatch an evil conspiracy in print. That's the lesson there. And definitely not email. It's too easy to send around. Don't write it down. You have a sit down, have a talk, you plan your stuff. But that's always an important one. Mom always said, an individual can never overcome a group will. If you got two people working against you, you need to enlist some other people. If you got a coven working against you, you need to enlist several people. I've got friends out there where we trade. we do favors for each other. We'll join forces with each other when these kind of things happen. It's a really good place to be too, because we talked before. 3 keys of magic: relaxation, concentration, and projection. Projection's the hardest part because you got to let it go. And if it was so important that you had to do a spell for it, harder to let it go. Well, my friend's doing it, he's less attached to the outcome. It's not as important to him, nobody's attacking him right then, or if somebody's attacking him, I'm less attached to the outcome too. So I'm gonna be able to just throw on, and it's, quite often a person you don't know. And you would think that a person that you do know, you're gonna get, you know, more anger towards and be able to throw them, but I find it's more effective throwing on a stranger.
Harder to let go of that
And-
emotional attachment.
And having said, you know, everything that I said in the class, I don't utilize these techniques all the time. I'm not an asshole. I'm not going around fucking with people all the time, but I think you need to know how, so you don't have to. And it's like, and if you're an extremely vocal guy like Uncle Birch, and you teach a series on magical warfare, and then you go to HexFest and teach it there too, less people gonna fuck with you. You know, so clearly I'm not a Wiccan, and I'm not going to harm none your ass. So you're probably gonna, you know, at least you're gonna bring your A game if you're gonna come at old Uncle Birch. So maybe reputation is an important thing to do too out there. Do we have any other questions back in the back?
I'm very naive about all of this, so if I ask a stupid question, forgive me, but, you may or may not know whether someone has sent a curse or something towards you, it seems to me, so how do you protect yourself? Is there, and then I have, you said you were kind of like, but you do a lot of curse breaking, I'm interested in knowing how you do that.
Okay. Well, that's good, because that's why I do the Q&A, it gets you back on track, because I have too much to say most days. Well, I laid out the first one. So the first sign that I'm looking for with a curse is sleep. You got a problem with your sleep. Even a bad hex or a bad practitioner can disrupt your sleep. And I only need to disrupt your REM sleep for about a week till you start to go crazy. And then you start to damage your life for me. I only have to do a little spell to cause that to happen, and then you're just gonna make bad decisions all over the place and make it worse and worse and worse. And it's still a curse, but you're doing the work. So first is the sleep. Constant feeling of dread and impending doom. That's what we look for. A cycle of bad luck that's lasted over a year. That causes me concern. It's a natural world. Things work in cycles. We have times that we're up, we have times that we're down, we have times we have good luck, we have times where everything sucks. If it stays on one side of the wheel for too long, well, then I have something unnatural. Something's been imposed on me here, or on the client there. They should have gotten out of it. Unless they've got that thing where they disrupted their sleep and they just keep fucking up their own lives, but it's the same thing. And the cure is the same thing. Some of the best things for those are spiritual washes. A lot of people are going to do that. A lot of confusion with that when people say spiritual wash in this day and age, or I'm sorry, they say spiritual bath. It's not a bath. It's more of a shower. It's most often something you're going to pour over your head. Most often something you're going to collect in some little tub that you're standing in. And you know, you're going to throw it in the crossroads, or throw it towards the rising sun or the setting sun, depending. You know, there's varying things where you're going to throw the stuff, but pour it over your head. Some of my go-tos for that, I always have growing in the house. I'm going to have rosemary, rue, basil. And basil is going to help my money too. When I was talking earlier, you know, about protecting the kids and stuff. You know, I've had competitors. We've had witch wars. They attack the money. It's like, you know, if you attack my money, that's taking food out of my kid's mouth. So that's the same thing as attacking my kids. I'll be just as vehement with somebody trying to, you know, make me broke like that too. But then it occurs to me, all of those things that I just mentioned to you can be taken internally. Check with your doctor first, especially rosemary. You can't do it that often. It can cause liver and kidney damage if done. But I told you to check with your doctor, so that covered my ass. But the internal, it's like that's the thing that I see missing. We'll like maybe, you know, pull up white light through us and do that kind of spiritual cleansing and stuff like that, but actually using the components inside the body, I don't see that enough, and that's old school. That's, you know, I learned that when I was a kid. It's just, I think it's one of those things we don't talk about for legal reasons nowadays, but I'm probably gonna wanna do the tea. All of those things too burn well together. They smell pretty good as an incense just by themselves. So in internally, smoke. I can powder all of these things and make them a powder too, sprinkle them under the doorstep, around the house. The places where you sleep is the most important protections that you gotta have. Protect the place you sleep, protect the place where your kids sleep. I've gotten to the point where I trained my shields to have a certain program that I won't give to you now because that's for another class. I've done it so many times, 45 freaking years doing this. I just say shields up. And I can do that if I'm passing out half drunk, which you definitely don't want to be drunk either. You're susceptible when you're drunk too. Or if you're just falling asleep, whatever, and then later down the road, I program my shields. Hey, look, if I'm falling asleep, just go up. Just go up. If I forget to do it, go up. Shields up. So I think of Jean-Luc Picard, man. I just say shields up. My shields are up and they're doing the program. I mean, I'm gonna usually transform that energy coming into something else. But that's actually kind of based off of my witch mother's, some of her original work, one of the most devious protection things ever. She did this transformation spell, and I turned the entire spell into a sigil. And you go to my YouTube page, just Google me. I always say, Google me, bitch. Just Google Uncle Birch, and you'll find it all out there. But the transformation sigil and the things that I did with the transformation is the most devious because, and Mom would do this. She would teach in the darkest possible way. He says, so when somebody's throwing on you out there, they're going to be feeling you. They're going to be feeling the wave. And what they're feeling for is anything coming back. And if they're sending a stream towards you and they feel a wave coming back, an experienced practitioner is going to go, all right, you got shields up. You got protections on the other side, so I'm going to have to work it harder or go around it, work a different angle on the spell, that kind of thing. But if there's a sucking feeling on the other side, they think they got you. They think they're through your shields. If you're taking that energy and just pulling it in and turning it into something else, they're doing your spell work for you. When they feel that sucking feeling, they're going to throw more. You're turning this into money, they're going to throw more and make you rich. Devious. Mom was just, I never saw anybody else come up with that. And I have her book posted. I found it on Amazon, and the book that's in is still in print. It's like one of the oldest books out there. And I read my mom's work nowadays, and it's pretty damn hoodoo. When I started studying hoodoo, I found I wasn't learning much at all. I grew up with all of those techniques, and then I finally read my mom's books that I hadn't seen in like 30 years. It's hoodoo with a lot of planetary magic incorporated to it and some ceremonial magic on top of it. And it's like, oh shit, that's why I've been carrying high junk. It's called Protection, Charms, and Spells by Jade. And if you find my Uncle Birch Facebook page, I posted a link to it that I get a little cut off of when I sell a copy of it. But some of the best and most devious, you got two different court case spells, one if you're guilty and one if you're innocent. I don't see that kind of thing too often these days.
Clever.
So those are just some of the things that I would suggest for protecting yourself, and some of the common things. Also, being accident prone when you're not. Like people with car accidents, falling down, injuries, these kinds of things will make me look for other things in a curse. You had a question on that?
I did. How did you find your witch mother, and how does one go about finding a mother?
Huh. Well, I call her my witch mother because she probably raised me as much as my mother. Back in the 80s, there was this thing called latchkey kids. Anybody one of those?
Yeah.
It probably sucked when I was a kid, but looking back at it, it allowed me the freedom to end up studying witchcraft full time and taking the GED and dropping out of high school to do it. I had a general equivalency degree thing. I did that, and so I found her, let's see, I was, a friend of mine in I think it was junior high, we believed her mother was a witch. And we, one day when she was at work, we broke into her magic closet. And I found powders, incense, oils, and all of them had this sticker on it that said, "The Eye of the Cat, 3314 East Broadway, Long Beach, California." I go, huh, that's not far from here. I had just moved to Long Beach, California, and it was kind of weird, you know, why my mom decided, but I think it was to get me close to the witch store, because I had an awakening at like 9 years old, and a bunch of stuff clicked, and I could never explain this to my parents or to anybody else. It was a large vision of the universe and a spirituality and a religion that just kind of developed. I just sat with myself, didn't talk to anybody about it, and when I was 13 years old, I ended up tracking down that address, walking into this witch store, and I met these people that were practicing the religion I thought I made up since 9 years old. Every word for word, line for line, exactly what I'd come up with. My first spells that I had done, I then studied and said, fuck, it's perfect, perfect. They were just exactly what I should have done according to the textbook. So, I don't know, something called me to find this witch store. And that's probably why I ended up being a witch store owner for all those years. I just saw that as an extremely important place. And when the first witch store in Santa Cruz opened, I ended up landing a job there because people there knew me, and they knew I knew my shit, and they needed the owner had just been initiated as a Gardnerian Wiccan, you know, 2 days before she opened a shop. They needed somebody that knew their stuff, and we had to pick a craft name to be known by, and only that craft name would we be known by in the shop. I just thought about it for a second. I go, Birch. Birch is the first letter in the tree alphabet of the Druids. It's the doorway to the spiritual world. So I saw working in a witch store as a sacred position. There's going to be new witches coming to me, and they're going to be looking to get on their path, and I need to know all of the players in town, figure out, know who to send them to. Oh, you're into that kind of magic? Okay. Oh, you want Wicca? Here's some Wiccans. Oh, you got some hoodoo? Here's some hoodoos. You know, just I needed to know all the players, and so that's why I chose the name. And then somehow Uncle got attached, maybe because I'm old. And eventually I become known as Uncle Birch.
Tell them more about Judy when she lifted the curtain and stuff.
She lifted the curtain. Oh, okay. Yeah, so the witch mom. So I go to this store. There's crystals, herbs. There's the biggest herb selection probably anybody has still to this day. And she used to wildcraft all of her herbs and grow them all. And so it was interesting. And there was just this woman just looking right through me. Everywhere I went, this most intense eyes ever. She's just looking at me, looking at me, looking at me. And I'm looking around the shop, and it's kind of like, I mean, this is the early 80s. It's more what we would call a new age shop at this point. There's some crystals and trinkets and stuff. Oh my. And so I looked at the lady, and I said, nice shop. Do you have any? And she goes, books. And there was this beaded curtain right here. It looked like there was a wall behind it, and somehow it was a glamour. She had a glamour, and she went like this, and it just fell away. The wall was not there anymore. You look through the beaded curtain, and there's books all the way to the ceiling, and statues and blades, and incense and oils and brews. I walked in, and I go, I'm home, and I don't even know where it is yet. I didn't have any tools or anything. I plopped my ass down. I think the first thing I picked up was Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon. They were in one book at that time, leather-bound, beautiful book. And then the first one I bought was the Book of Black Magic and of Pacts.
Arthur Wade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was an ominous-looking leather-bound book, and that I was like I like to say I'm OG, original goth. I was goth before there was goth. You know, back then I looked like goth, but it was like death punk and horror punk, that kind of thing. And I would walk down the halls with my eye makeup on and shit, carrying that thing like it was my Bible. And guess what? People didn't fuck with me. Football players were scared of me and shit. So that was answer your question. Anybody else? Questions? Oh man, those were good questions. You carried me far. Yes?
In conjunction with what she was saying, wouldn't you recommend also maybe being rooted so that you can actually detect what's coming at you? If you're not planted well yourself, are you going to be able to actually?
Yeah. Yeah. For that, I got servitors. That comes to us, it's more chaos magic, a little bit of ceremonial magic. A servitor, for those of you who don't know, it's kind of like an artificially created familiar. It has no life except what you give it. It's not a real spirit, it's an energy form. I guess in New Age we call it a thought form too, but a servitor is more specific. It's a servant, which is why, you know, a lot of these kids out on the new witch sites are, how am I going to find my familiars? Like, do you understand what a familiar is? It's a spirit that has been tortured into doing your bidding. This goes back to Solomon and Agrippa and all those guys, and then most of us in this day and age, we think that's kind of unsavory. We don't want to be like stabbing demons with shit and forcing them to do our bidding, or, you know, stabbing spirits, like, you know, what a force. And these people are talking about their cat.
Yeah.
You know, they're thinking that a familiar is actually an animal. It's like, do you want to torture your cat to do your bidding? No, but a servitor has no purpose other than what you give it. A servitor can be imbued with anything that you can wrap your head around. It's like, I can't fly, I got servitors that can fly. I can't turn invisible, but I got servitors that can turn invisible. I got servitors that can do anything. So I got a servitor that tells me when that kind of shit's going on. And they'll wake me up and, wake up, somebody fucking with you. I know you got your shields up and everything, but wake up, they're fucking with you right now, man. And so I first made a servitor to let me know when that kind of thing was going on, but then I added to it. I said, show me the face. Show me the face of the person doing it. So I rarely have to do that, you know, enemy unknown thing on the thing. I usually find out, you know, the who back at the beginning of this class. What else was I going to say about servitors? But then you know, defense servitors. I was so crazy with servitors, I now have a general in charge of a couple 100,000 troops. And I imbued that general with Sun Tzu and famous generals throughout history. It's like everything, I can conceive of what this general knew, I can give it to my servitor. It's like anything that as long as I can wrap my head around it, I can make a servitor that can do that, even if it's not something that I can do. Wait, you first.
So, in so many words, you are programming it to do whatever you need it to do.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. God, you know, I need to get an idea across to somebody's brain. I got one that, you know, goes into people's subconscious and delivers messages. It's like once you start with it, you end up with like minions, but you got to maintain them. The thing with servitors, it's that whole nature abhors a vacuum thing. You got to feed them, or they turn, and they could turn bad. And that's, at that point, you've got to get rid of them. Yeah, in the back.
These days, I would say that my enemies are more spiritual than human, and particularly, I guess, if I'm doing warfare, what I'm interested in, there are certain political ideologies these days that I am interested in going to war against. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, a bunch of witches decided they wanted to bind and/or hex Trump. Where do they do that? On the internet. They posted it everywhere. Trump knew about it. Fox News knew about it. Christians are praying at it. No clear version of what they want to do. No clear spells out there. I didn't think binding was going to be good enough. But then a couple of you know him. I have a student, and he's recently disavowed it, but he believed he was working as part of a military operation to magically protect Trump. And I think he's been around me long enough that he has now formally denounced that. But then there's, did you hear about David Griffin?
Oh, yes.
Okay. The self-appointed leader of the Golden Dawn. He's self-appointed because he sued his way into the job. He saw fit to protect Trump by building the equivalent of magical lightning rods at the four corners of his property to draw all of those spells to him. And then let's see, his son died. Horrible car accident, wife got horribly injured, dog died. That was just last year. I lost track of everything that happened to him. So I was like, careful what you wish for, I guess.
Careful what you want, it might want you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So on that, there was the unfortunate during the Second World War, because you have the Second
Uh-huh.
World War, and you have the nice English witches versus the evil Nazi occultists.
Mhm.
But her magical battle of Britain provides a good template, because what her group was focusing on was not so much defeating the Nazis. They were very much about, let's not have England invaded, that would be bad,
Yeah.
but we're gonna have peace. What kind of peace are we going to have so that this does not happen again?
Mhm.
And so if you're focusing on Trump, what put Trump in office is ideas.
Mhm.
So never mind Trump, go and kill the ideas, think about post-Trump,
Huh?
what do you want the world to look like?
But how do you do that?
Well,
It's in the book.
I
Sorry.
got a recommendation for that one.
okay.
May I? Thank you. Dichotomy. So Trump and this political ideologies that have gone on since 2016, where everybody's always dividing each other. There's a neat little game you can play that this beautiful Hecate and Witch taught me, and that's you take a Mobius lead. So a piece of paper, a long strip of paper, you fold it once, tape it back on itself. Now, you can put whatever kind of magic or targeting you want on that. If you want to turn division into absolute chaos, just start cutting it right down the middle. And just keep cutting. And keep cutting. Stay in the middle. And that strip turns into a ball of just nested nastiness that you can do with whatever you want at that point and direct it in any other direction that you want to go. But it takes, it also, all of those things are gonna take time, but use the dichotomy against it.
Nice. All right, so let me, since you brought up that one, I'm gonna close with this one. Back late 90s, I guess, before we had an internet, the witches were organizing on the pre-internet, which is called BBS systems, which operates pretty much just like the internet we know. But it was pretty primitive. Computers would call each other at midnight and exchange information down the line. But the pagans were organized. There was it's called the Pagan Information Network. And we had email. It could take a week for something to get to the other side of the country. It was snail mail was faster. But based on that idea of the Lammas Night idea, the shielding Britain from Hitler idea, the Gulf War happened. And all witches were totally peaceniks and opposed to war, and they all decided, hey, somebody threw out an idea, well, we're going to do a spell to stop the war. Our coven's going to do it. We figured out that this is the best night, this best moon phase, to do it on, and so we're, here's our time zone. We're going to do this thing on this day and this hour to stop the war. And so people jumped on all over. Yeah, I want to do that. I want to do that. My group's going to do that. My group's going to do that. So everybody agreed to it. And it was a powerful thing to see witches coming together to do something like that hadn't happened since World War II. Then we had to argue and debate about the statement of intent, the first part of any spell. Your clear words, your mission statement. And when the smoke cleared, what we settled on was stop the war quickly. That was the only thing anybody could agree on. Anybody that studied the history of that, well, technically the war ended pretty quickly. The atrocities that were the war, the no-fly zones, the missile strikes, the starving children, that went on until Gulf War II. What was that? I think the first one was Desert Storm, and the next one was Enduring Freedom. I don't even remember what those ones were called. So,
Iraqi freedom.
Yeah, you would know, I guess, huh? So, the thing I would like to close on is, it's a lot of people don't want to think about enemies, and maybe you don't want to use the word, but adversaries define us, and they bring out the best in us, that competition. And one of my favorite books, The 48 Laws of Power, he says, your enemies bring out your strengths. If you don't have any, find a way to make some. Thank you. And we'll hopefully see you at the next two.